This stars, they say in my part of the world, and welcome from me, Martin Smith, aka Cornish Grandad, to my YouTube channel. I trust you're well and interested in exploring our second part on the shader. Last session we opened up the Node editor to create wood material for our kitchen furniture. Today we're going to solidify that knowledge by creating a floor for us to stand on. First, however, we'll explore how to get the best out of the Node editor and how to use it most efficiently, and understand the different types of textures, roughness, displacement and bump. And then we'll use the brick texture to create our tiled floor for our kitchen scene. So in the previous session, which is the first one on the shader, we created two wood effects, mahogany for the tabletop and chair tops, seats, and an oak effect, which hopefully you applied to all the relevant components. And I set you a task to create a pine material. Today we're going to turn this horrible blank pink floor into a nice tiled terracotta floor. But before we do that, it'd be worth learning a bit more about how to create and use nodes. Remember, the first thing we did was we actually added the Node Wrangler add-on and set our noodles to be curved. And if you don't remember how to do the add-on, it was Edit, Preferences. You go to Add-ons, type in Node, and there's your Node Wrangler, which you should have ticked. If you want to look at the shortcuts that are available in the Node Wrangler, if you click on the down arrow box and then show hotkeys, that is the list of all the hotkeys that are available in Node Wrangler, which is a pretty impressive list if you ask me. I don't use most of those, and I'm sure you won't be surprised to know that. So here's the list of the shortcut keys that I use in Node Wrangler, and let's look at them one at a time. So let's just move that slightly out. So that was just a click and drag. And what we'll do is we disconnect that from that for the moment. Now, if I want to connect those two together, I would normally click on that and I can drag that across to that, and that works fine. You can see my picture updates. There's an alternative way of doing that, and Node Wrangler uses the right mouse button key quite a lot. In this case, it's Alt and right mouse button. This is called a lazy connect, and what it will do is it connect the first slots it can find that are the same color. So in this case, it was the surface and something and the volume in there. If I had, for example, let's just add another input in here. We'll add a noise texture in here. If I had a noise texture already into there and I did a lazy connect from here to here, it will connect up to the volume because it's the next available green slot. The other really useful one is the lazy cut, which is the control button. So if I hold the control button, right mouse button, and you can see I get this knife appears, drag it across, it cuts those connections all in one go. So that's very useful. So let's just lazy connect these two together, Alt and drag. Now let's say I wanted to connect this color to this volume here. It's not logical, but there we go. And as you can see, the noodle is appearing behind the principal BSDF, and you might not want that. So one way of getting rid of this is to add a reroute. So that's Shift and right mouse button. Then I can grab that and I can pull that down. I could add another one here, perhaps Shift and right mouse button. I could grab that and pull that down, and you may find that that looks neater. Obviously, when you get very complicated node setups, these things are very useful to have. So let's just delete these. Delete delete, and I can delete that. Let's one useful thing sometimes is to have a texture coordinate and stuff. So if we add, for example, a texture node, we could reuse that noise texture. Actually, should have thought about that. And we connect this color to here. Often we use texture coordinates, so we can do a Control T, which will add in the texture coordinate and the mapping node, and that's very useful. And we did that when we created the stripy lines on our table. If I undo that, it's an alternative way of doing it. If you don't want to do it that way, is if you hit N for get the node set up. There's Node Wrangler there. With that still selected, add texture does exactly the same thing. Now let's say I wanted a second mapping node, so I could do right click and duplicate and drag that down there, and perhaps I want those two to be in line. I can connect them, select them both, select one, shift select the other one, S, X, 0 will put them in line, and then I can move them together if I wish to, but okay, neat and tidy. That's another useful one to do. Sometimes we want to see the effect of this noise texture on the surface, and the option there is Shift Control left click, and it creates a viewer node, and that's the pattern that this noise texture is going to have. So if we slid these things around, we can see the effect of that noise texture through that viewer. The final one that's worth doing is if we add, we'll add a brick texture. We're going to use this in a bit in any case. Let's just move these over. So I'll just select those and just grab those, move them, create a bit of space. And I'm going to merge these two together. So there's different merge modes. If I want to do a mix mode, I could select that one, shift select that one, Control 0, and it's creating a mix node. I could do exactly the same if I wanted to do a math addition, etc. as well. So they're all very useful options. Let's get rid of all of these. I don't want those at the moment. And we'll get rid of that. And we'll just lazy connect those two together again. If you look at the add option, these are all the options we've got to add nodes, input nodes, texture nodes, very important area, vector nodes, etc. But I don't use a lot of these. So what I've done is, rather than having to search and find these, because in all ways, you want to find something, it's search. Where's the math node, for example? There's the math node, add a math node. Slow process. There's some ones I use quite often, and they're on the list above. So what I suggest you do is you go through these, have a look at what they've got, and if it's on my list, so for example math node, right click, add to quick favorites. So spend a bit of time exploring what these nodes are. I don't add the texture ones on because they're often the first thing I add, and I know where they are because they're a texture node. It's just the other ones that I tend to add. So add those to quick favorites, and then when you've done that, come back and we'll create our floor. So we're now ready to create our floor texture. So we're going to add a texture. We use the brick texture, drop that in there, lazy connect those up, see what we've got. So there's a basic tile texture. It's grey and white and black at the moment. So we can make this a terracotta colour, something like that probably. Make this one a bit redder, possibly a bit darker. And the grout I would like to have as a grey colour, but obviously you can choose what you like. Okay, got a starting point. Scale's far too big. Let's scale those down to something you're happy with. So we've got a basic floor colour, but everything's very shiny at the moment. So let's take this factor and we'll plug it into the base colour. This is a useful technique sometimes to see. And you've got black and white textures. Now black is a 0, and white is a 1. In this case, white, if we connect the factor into roughness, the black is shiny, as you can see, and the white is not shiny. Now there are 3 basic textures in here. We've got roughness here, we've got the normal, which is where the bump will go. So if we add a bump node, quick favorites, bump into normal, factor into height. Now bump is the smallest, it's kind of very fine detail. Roughness is the texture, it doesn't actually affect the height of anything, it just how much reflection is. And the last one we've got is displacement, which actually is quite a big effect. So what we need to do is we're going to adjust all of these, but I want to just get rid of those for the moment. So we'll just cut those, and we'll connect that back up again, so where we were, sorry. And now we're going to add a texture setup, and we can hide that with an N. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to rotate these tiles because I want them running the other way. So we rotate these tiles, I want them running the other way. There we go. So we've got some tiles in place, and it's far too smooth, so we need to add some randomness. So I'm going to add in a noise texture. So that's one of the ones I have on my favorite list. I'll put it there. Remember, we can line those 2 up, so we can do Shift X0. Looks nice and neat and tidy. There we go. And I'm going to move these ones to get myself a bit more space. And to create even more space, we can scale this window up a bit because we don't need to see all the floor. And if we want to get rid of this panel, if we take our cursor here until it's a plus sign, take our cursor here until it's a plus sign and move it, you can see you get a little arrow appears. I'll do that again, and that will get rid of that, so you've got maximum space to work with. Let's move this. So if I put the noise texture factor into here for a minute, this is the noise pattern we're going to get. Obviously we can change the scale, detail, distortion, etc. But let's first of all mix these 2 together, which is a good starting point. So let's get rid of that let's get rid of that for a minute. Mix these 2 together. So we'll do a Control 0, creates a mix node. But I've actually got the factor, I want the factor to go into there rather than anything else. And then I can put that into the base color. Sorry, I've done that wrong. I can put that into the roughness. That should still be into the color. Let Eevee catch up, and I can adjust how much of the, if I was all the way that way, it's all of this factor, the top one. If I go all of that way, it's all of the noise factor, which is the bottom one. And obviously I can go somewhere between, and that's now adjusting my roughness that I'm getting, and it's being distorted by this. So if I adjust the scale up and down, I can distortion up and down, and I'm beginning to get a bit more of a pattern appearing on here now. So I can also connect this output here into my displacement. I'm beginning to get even more texture here. Perhaps I need to take my roughness down a bit, I don't know. And I can take the output of here and I can drop it into my height, which is going to drive my bump. That's far too much, so I probably need to pull the strength down quite a bit. But we're beginning to see we're getting some good effects here. So at the moment I have my texture coordinate is driving my mapping, which we've used to rotate the tiles around. We've got a bricks texture here, which has got some basic colors in here and scales and stuff, and we're mixing that with a noise so we get a bit more variety in here. And then we're using the color from the brick texture to drive the principal BSDF. We're using the mixed distortion in here to drive the displacement, the roughness, and the normal map. Now, what we could do is we could add a math node in here. So if we do a quick math node, we'll drop it in there, or it will automatically connect up. We can add a multiplier here. We can multiply it by a value, say 2. So that means we're doubling the displacement, so we're getting more of a displacement effect. So that's a reasonably good layout. What you might not like is the fact that these lines are disappearing behind here. There's not really much way around that. What we could do is we could add in a reroute node and tidy that up so that looks a bit better. There's no way around the fact that we've got these crossing over here, I don't think. Okay, if you're happy with that. If not, have a quick play with it, get it how you like, make sure you're happy with it, and then save that.
If you enjoyed and learnt something from this second part of the shader tutorial, if you have, then please support this channel by clicking like, or if you wish to see more, then click the subscribe button. A link to the next video in the series that expands on our work so far is available on screen.